Okay, so working on fractions, we are now going to tackle what is probably the most difficult thing that you can do with fractions, which is subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. So we're going to start just by subtracting fractions and talk about when you regroup or borrow, how does that work with fractions? So I'm going to get this set up. We're going to share the screen, and we're going to talk about subtracting fractions, first of all, with like denominators, but then we're going to talk about subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. But the biggest problem here is really, it has to do with something that is the root of why people don't understand fractions. And that is the fact that fractions do not work on a base 10 number system. Most of the time when we're doing numbers, we have things going on like we're adding numbers like 56 and 25, and we're adding them up, and we're like, okay, well, 6 plus 5, it's bigger than a single digit. There's no single digit we can put down here because 6 plus 5 is 11. So we would carry the 1 and we would put the 1 down. In our number system, when we get past 9, we have to go to another place value. But that doesn't happen in fractions. Fractions, everything is based off of the bottom number. So for example, in a Kit Kat bar, if you open a package, a regular size Kit Kat bar, there are 4 Kit Kat sticks inside a Kit Kat bar. So it would look something like this, right? There'd be 4 sticks inside a Kit Kat bar wrapper. So if we have, for example, 1 Kit Kat bar, so we get one as a Turkey Hill or something. We have 1 Kit Kat bar. That is equal to 4 out of 4 pieces. So once we get past the 4th piece, or actually once we get to the 4th piece, we have an entire Kit Kat bar. So Kit Kat bars, you could have 1 out of 4 pieces, or you could have 2 out of 4 pieces, or 3 out of 4 pieces. But as soon as you get to 4 out of 4 pieces, that is equal to 1 bar. So here's why it gets a little bit tricky. When you're borrowing with regular numbers, say you have 101 minus 25, we should know how to handle this, right? You look next and you say, well, I can't do 1 minus 5. So I'm going to borrow. Well, I can't borrow from the 0, so I borrow here. That makes that a 10. Well, that still doesn't help us with this. So we borrow from the 10 and make that a 9. And then this becomes an 11. And we have 90 plus 11. Well, 90 plus 11 is still 101. So what we did was we took our 101, and essentially we took our $100 bill and cashed it in for 10 $10 bills. Then we took a $10 bill and cashed it in for 10 $1 bills. We still have the same amount of money, but now we can do 11 minus 5 is 6, 9 minus 2 is 7, and we've got our answer. With fractions, when we borrow, if say, for example, we have 2.5 Kit Kat bars. Let's even make this easier. Not 2.5, let's say 2 bars, 2 full packages, and 1/4 of a stick. So I have 2 of these, and I'm going to grab 1 stick of a Kit Kat bar. So I'm going to grab these, grab my 2. So this is what I've got. I've got 2 and 1/4 of a Kit Kat bar. And I want to subtract, I want to give somebody 3/4 of a Kit Kat bar, which means basically I want to give them 3 sticks of a Kit Kat bar. Well, I can't do that because right now I have 2 full Kit Kat bars and I have a 1/4 of a bar. I can't give away 3 sticks. Like if I have 3 friends, I want to give them all a stick of Kit Kat, I can't do it. So what do I have to do? I have to unwrap a Kit Kat bar. Here's what gets people with fractions. When you borrow fractions, you don't get 10. There are not 10 pieces of Kit Kats in a Kit Kat bar. There are 4. We know that because the bottom number tells us what we're going to get when we borrow. Now, you might have to replay this 5 or 6 times to get this straight in your head, but this is really important. When you borrow a fraction, it works the same way, except you don't get 10. So I have one stick of a Kit Kat bar. If I unwrap a Kit Kat bar and snap it into pieces, I get 4 pieces. So the 4 pieces I get, the one Kit Kat I borrow is equal to 4/4, which is going to make this a 5. All right, because when I unwrap this, I get 4 of these. So now what I have, this is important. What I have, I unwrapped one of my packages and I got 1, 2, 3, 4 Kit Kat bars. I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, and the one that I started with. I now have 5 individual bars and 1 full package. It's the same number of Kit Kat bars because when I started with 2 1/4, that was 4, 8, 9 bars, and I still have 4 bars here in my unwrapped bar and 5 there. It's still 9 bars. Okay, now the shortcut for this, the shortcut is when you borrow fractions, you're going to take the denominator, add it to the numerator, and that is your new numerator. That's your new top number. But I want you to understand why it works. So 4 plus 1 is 5, but when you borrowed, you got 4 pieces. 4 pieces plus 1 is 5 pieces. Now, if you can get this down, the rest of it's easy. 5 minus 3 is 2. The denominator stays the same. 1 minus nothing is 1. And that would reduce to 1 1/2, which would be the answer to the problem. Okay. So that is the big deal. That's the most important thing that you need to understand with fractions and subtracting fractions, whether or not they have the same denominators. When they do not have the same denominators, it's going to basically be the same thing. So we're going to do one more that has the same denominators, but we're going to need to borrow. And then we're going to go through the steps of what you do when you don't have the same denominator. So let's just make one up. Let's do fifths just for the heck of it. 5 1/5 minus 2, and we'll do 2/5. Sure. Okay. We cannot do 1/5 minus 2/5, so we're going to borrow. I'm going to cross this out. This is going to become a 4. We're going to regroup. Now, pause the video, write down what you think this is going to be, and then pick it up again, see if you got it right. All right, give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so when we borrow that, because they are in fifths, the one that we borrowed is equal to 5/5 because 5/5 equals 1. 5/5, the one we borrowed plus the 1/5 we have, this would become a 6. Okay, not 11. It's a 6. We borrowed 5/5. 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 minus 2 is 4. 5 is the denominator. 4 minus 2 is 2. That cannot be reduced. And we're done. All right, next step. Next step is to subtract fractions with unlike denominators. As you can see, I still have my Kit Kat bars here. So the only thing that we are going to add in this situation is we have to make common denominators. All right, like denominators, we have to do that. So in this case, we'll do, say, a 2 1/2 minus 1, and we'll do 4/5. And now we're back to the same thing that we have when we're subtracting, when we're adding fractions with unlike denominators. Your very first step is you have to make a problem where the denominator is the same for both numbers. So you go through your times tables, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and you go through your fives tables, 5, 10, 15, 20, and you'll see here's your 2s, and here's your 5s. 5 times 2 is 10. As soon as you get to that, that's the first number that they share. Bottom number is going to be 10. How did you make a 2 into a 10? Well, you went 2 times 5 equals 10. So you have to do the same thing for the top. 1 times 5 is 5. And 5/10 is exactly the same number as 1/2. 5 times 2 is 10. 4 times 2 is 8. And 8/10 is exactly the same number as 4/5. You still have your whole number 2, and you still have your whole number 1. So our new problem is 2 and 5/10 minus 1 and 8/10, exactly the same as what we had, just now we have pieces that are the same size. Okay, we cannot do 5 minus 8, so we're going to borrow. Now in this case, everybody's going to be happy because this is in 10 pieces, and 10 over 10 is equal to the 1 that we borrowed. So this is going to become a 15. 10 plus 5 is 15. Works out great. 15 minus 8 is 7. 10 stays 10. 1 minus 1 is 0. And that, my friends, is what we're left with. So let's take a look, because it doesn't reduce. Let's take a look in the book and see what we've got. So I'm on the Kaplan book on page 247. And it says that we are doing fraction operations. And I'm going to take a look at number 21. Number 21 is 14 1/4 minus 10 3/7. Well, got a couple issues. One, we're subtracting fractions. That's always an issue. But we have to come up with a denominator that 4 and 7 both go into. So if we think about our 4 times tables, 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 12, times 4 is 16, 20, 24, 28. All right, I'm going to stop and check the 7s. 7 times 1, 7 times 2, 7 times 3, 7 times 4, and there it is. The first number is going to be these two numbers multiplied by each other. So we're going to end up with 14 and something over 28 minus 10 and something over 28. So we got to cut these pieces into 28ths. Okay, fair enough. 4 times 7 is 28. 1 times 7 is 7. 7 times 4 is 28. 3 times 4 is 12. We cannot do 7 minus 12. So we have to borrow or regroup. We're going to borrow 1. This is going to become a 13. Now, when you're dealing with something that has 28 pieces, what does it take to equal, what does it take to equal 1? Well, it's got to be the same number on top, right? So in this case, when we borrow 1, we are getting 28 28ths. So we need to add that to the 7 that we already have. 28 plus 7 is 35. So instead of 14 7/8, it's 13 and 35 28ths. Same exact number. We did not change the number. We just regrouped. 35 minus 12. Well, 5 minus 2 is 3. 3 minus 1 is 2 over 28. 23 is a prime number, and it doesn't go into 28. 13 minus 10 is 3. So our final answer is 3 and 23 28ths. If you look up the answer key, that should be what you get in the Kaplan book. All right. Good luck borrowing fractions with unlike denominators. Take your time. Make sure you understand it. This is a very important concept. And I'll see you next with multiplying and dividing fractions, which are actually easier than this. Good job.